Hey, what's going on? It's Sav. Welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. So we recently got information from Mihoyo during their developers discussion. We are getting huge buffs to elemental reactions. Finally, we've been asking for it, we've been waiting for it, and it looks like they're finally going to do something about it. We're going to talk about all the increases here today and what they have given us in terms of pieces of information. So be sure to stick through all the way to the end of the video so you don't miss anything. But before we get started, be sure to like the video. Let's try to go for 100 likes on this one. And also subscribe so you don't miss any future content. All right, without further ado, let's get into today's video. I actually can't believe that this information was released already from Mihoyo. I mean, if it was released by leakers, that's one thing. But the fact that Mihoyo came out and said that they're working on stuff for 1.6 and the information that they gave us already seems pretty early. So let's take a look at it. There's the information in game, right? But we'll go ahead and take it the developer's notes right here. I will leave a link in the description box below so you guys can see this for yourself. There's some information here that doesn't really matter too much. But we're going to go down to here to this last question on this page here. The question was, some effects generated by the triggering of certain elemental reactions, such as elemental resonance, affect high voltage, and the 4-piece set effects of the artifact set Viridescent Venerer and Thundering Fury cannot take effect when elemental reaction is triggered very far away from the character. So some people were having issues with the effects of these things triggering when they're far from an enemy. But it seems that it may be more of a visual situation when it comes to anyone playing on anything less than PC. So the answer here is the appearance of the issue is due to the game design implemented during the development prior to release in order to avoid placing excessive requirements on system performance as well as maintain a consistent experience across platform. We place a distance restriction on the effect activation of elemental reactions. This restriction does not usually affect the normal combat experience in the game, but can be noticed when travelers attempt to trigger this type of effect on targets extremely far away, as the effect will not be triggered as normal. At the same time, the developers have continuing to pay close attention to how travelers utilize various elemental reactions in combat in order to increase the role that elemental reactions play in combat. This is the part right here. We plan to make the following adjustments in the future versions. They have to make things consistent across all platforms. So PC is always limited by the bottleneck of console and mobile. So that's why when you see cross-platform games, they're not always when you play on PC, for instance, they're not always the best looking games. They're not always the best performing games. It's just whatever is going to work best on the lowest form or the lowest platform that game is going to be ran on. That's what the base is ran off of. So I digress. Let's go into more of this because this is where it gets really interesting. The elemental reactions, we've been asking for a boost to elemental reactions, not just melt and vaporize, but the majority of elemental reactions that exist in this game. So let's take a look here. What are we going to be getting? First thing, when a character reaches level 60 or above, the damage caused by major reactions, electrocharged, superconduct, overloaded, swirl, and shatter will be increased. So once you get to level 60, let's pull over here to the game. Let's just go with Rosaria since we're on her already. When we look at Elemental Mastery, you have two different sets of damage increases for that takes place with. So you have Vaporize and Melt. They get a smaller increase because it's already a 2 times or a 1.5 times increase depending on how you do your Vaporize or Melt. More about that in plenty other videos. If you don't know the difference between how to get a 1.5 versus a 2 times multiplier, it's not that hard to figure out. You can go find that in other videos. They're everywhere. But you get a 27.1% increase or a smaller increase for these two because they already have a massive multiplier. These don't have that multiplier. They just go off of an increased damage and then this percentage right here. So we have overloaded, superconduct, electrocharge, shatter, swirl. Increased damage absorption of shields through crystalline by 43%. So this affects everything here. Elemental Mastery affects the overall damage increase of all reactions and the damage absorption of shields through crystallize. Great, we all know this, nothing has changed, but now once we get to level 60, these damage caps are going to increase passively. Really nice, especially for these right here. Not the melt and vaporize ones. I don't believe it's for them. I think it's just for this the secondary, where the I'm just going to call them the majority of reactions. The lesser reactions are going to get an increase after level 60. It's also going to give us a reason to level up some characters beyond that point, or ascend them beyond that point, because some characters you don't need them to ascend past a certain stage because they're completely for support. And like Diona, for instance, you don't need her at a high level or a high ascension. You just need to make sure that you can use her shield and her heals. That's pretty much what you need her for. All right, so I'm really glad that we're going to be getting an increase on these, because they do need help. Overloaded, Superconduct, they need a lot of help. This is going to help Eula even more here for Overloaded and Superconduct and Electrocharged. These three things right here, they're all Electro-based. And they need a lot of help for reactions. So the fact that we're going to be able to get that is going to be nice. A lot of the Electro characters are going to see a slight increase in output because of this. There's going to be a reason to spec into Elemental Mastery, maybe for some people after the buff. But I digress. There's going to be a lot of testing that needs to come, because they're not giving any official numbers just yet on this. So we have to wait for those to come out. All right, the second thing, the base shield damage absorption for shields generated by crystallized reaction will be increased. As we saw on this page here, we see I currently have at 43.4% for this current build. That will increase as well with the other reaction increase at level 60. I'm not exactly sure if that is at level 60 or if it's just going to be, just in general, it's going to be increased, because it specifies level 60 here, but it doesn't say that here. All right, number 3, the damage bonus provided by Elemental Mastery for major reactions will be increased. Refer to the attributes panel in game for the exact damage bonus. So not only is the base reaction going to be increased once you hit level 60, but the percentage increase for Elemental Mastery on the secondary reactions here, I don't want to call them secondary, I keep calling them secondary, but the lesser reactions here will be increased. So this Elemental Mastery value here will be increasing this percentage value here more. So 152 gets me 65% increase here. It's going to get me more than 65% in the future. Once again, we don't know what that value will be or what that increase is going to look like, but the fact that they're doing something about this is a move in the right direction. Took way too long, if you ask me, but at least we're moving that way. All right, and they go on to say the initial design of these adjustments is already being tested in the 1.6 beta. The developers are continuing to monitor the data and performance of these adjustments. Before any related changes are officially implemented into the version of the game, we will update travelers regarding the final design of these adjustments, which is really good. We're going to get more information on this later. So I'd like to ask you guys right now, how do you feel about getting an increase to these reactions? A much needed increase, because we all know Electro has been suffering from poor reactions. Overloaded just spreads enemies apart. Superconduct doesn't really, it seems like it doesn't really do much other than lower defenses for melee characters, for physical damage characters. And Electrocharged, it was just this dot that exists that it doesn't really, you don't really use it, you know? It's kind of just like a waste of time. Shattered is sometimes useful if you're using a freeze comp and you have a Claymore user. But at the same time, if you're using a freeze comp, you're better off just going with like melt or vaporize. You can just get that. It's just a better reaction damage output versus shattered. And then swirl. Look, Anemo users need, a swirl in general needs a rework. We're going to talk about that probably in another video. There is a new Anemo character coming out. It's a single-headed sword user. The way he uses Anemo is going to be should be the standard of how Anemo is going to be used in the game. I don't know if I can show information on that yet because it is a leak. So We'll talk about that in a future video down the road. But if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. Let's try to go once again for 100 likes on this one. Also subscribe so you don't miss any future updates for Genshin. And I will see you guys in the next video. Later. Come here, boy. I'm coming for that butt. Ha. What? Excuse me? How did that not hit him? Rosaria? Why you look so sad? I know, I'm sad too. It's okay.